Welcome, everyone. I have Bree Gorman with me today. Welcome, Bree.
Thank you.
Awesome to have you here. And we're going to dive in a little bit into your business journey today. And we're going to talk a little bit around who you are, what you do, all of the good things, and how you got to where you are today. Because you're in a really interesting space of work, which is something that I absolutely love learning about. And so I would love to dive into that today and talk a little bit more about that. So first and foremost, just for people who are meeting you for the first time, can you share a little bit around who you are and who you help?
Sure. So yes, I'm Bree. I use they, them pronouns. I'm a diversity, equity, and inclusion consultant. So I help organizations create the diversity, equity, and inclusion goals and then actually create the actions that achieve those goals. So I work with organizations across a whole range of industries, but really those that are interested in creating spaces for their employees, for people who interact with their business that are more inclusive, regardless of who that person might be. So we work through a consulting coaching model, and I also run workshops to do that as well. So the ultimate goal is, inclusive workplaces, which we know are better for our employees and for the people who interact with our business, but also just as a happenstance also happens to be great for business.
Yeah, perfect. I think to know both the impact of the work that you're doing is really important because we can obviously see it from a place of just being a nice place to work because it makes everyone, feel included and make sure that we're doing the right thing for other people, but also to know the business case around it as well, I think is really important. So in your line of work, like what are some of the things that you see like the result or the impact or some of the things that happen, when organizations really start to pay attention to this and really start to go through some of those transformations?
Yeah, it's sometimes that list feels too long, which is a really good thing, right? So obviously the first thing you start to see is that people enjoy being at work more, which absolutely, as we know, impacts the way that they engage and the way that and the things that they produce. So that we know, I think one of the latest statistics showed that if somebody feels like they belong in the workplace, they're 6 times more engaged. Now, we measure engagement all the time, but we don't necessarily measure belonging in the same way, which is such a key contributor. So we know that allows our people to show up as themselves, maintain their own health and well-being, so they're not constantly feeling that they're under stress and pressure to be somebody that they're not or to deal with negative behaviours that might be coming their way. So, there's all those benefits that go along with that health and well-being of the employees. Then, of course, just as happens, that what we know happens is that when people do feel that they belong and do feel that they're in a more inclusive environment, they are more likely to stay. So you're not wasting your recruitment investment on people. They are actually likely to be more innovative. So it's not because people who are different from you perhaps are more innovative than you by nature. It's that when we're in a group of people who are different and all bring different perspectives and different ideas, as a group and as a team, we're more innovative, which is a really wonderful kind of side effect of this work. We also know productivity increases for the other reasons that I mentioned, and we have a broader talent pool to access, which is really important for businesses right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I think they can experience it on both ends, the retention and the engagement when people are working within the organization, and then also on the recruitment side and the attractiveness of, what it means to work there and the company culture and all those sorts of things when it comes to being able to attract the right kinds of candidates as well. So I think, it definitely plays a part all along that employer journey, which is really huge. And I'd love to hear, how did you first get into this line of work? I'd love to hear the Bree story and tell me a little bit around, I think Steve Jobs said it best. He said, we can only sort of connect the dots when we look backwards. We can't connect them looking forwards. And so I find it really interesting when we sort of come into different work that we're doing as coaches and consultants, and then we kind of look back and we think, well, there were a few things that kind of led us into the work that we're doing. So I'd love to hear the Bree story and how you got started, in this space.
Yeah, I don't think that quote could be more true for me. The reason that I actually originally took on a role in diversity, equity, and inclusion was because I just needed a career change, and it was my only option at the time. So I'd love to say that it was my passion and my drive for creating inclusive workplaces. I didn't even really understand that yet when I started the work, which is not great, but also showing that transferable skills really work, right?
Yeah.
So my background was in science originally. I was a scientist. Then I spent a long period of time working in business development, commercialization, of science and engineering ideas and research management. So kind of in a similar field, but wasn't doing the actual science anymore.
Mm.
And I realized I needed a career change. And what was approaching for me was I wanted to start a family. And in that world, it just wasn't going to be that amenable to that.
Yeah.
And so I was looking for a career change, and I just happened to apply for a role that was looking at the way women are included in the sciences, in science, technology, engineering, maths, and medicine. And of course, I had that background experience, and I had stakeholder management skills, and I had data analysis, which I didn't know at the time were all vital skills to do this work. And so I think after my second week of doing that role, I was like, wow, I have absolutely found my career, what I was meant to be doing.
Yeah.
So it really just grew from there. So I worked as a diversity, equity, and inclusion manager for about 5 years within organisations, and then decided to make the change out to work on my own about 4.5 years ago.
Yeah, fantastic. I love that journey, and it can be quite a scary thing, to make that shift. But I love how you kind of use those, like you said, transferable skills cross into a new space. And it sounds like, work-life balance was becoming a little bit more important for you with growing family and all those sorts of things that I think for many of us in our careers, we can hit different inflection points, and we have external factors that come in and make us really think, like, is this what I want to continue to do, for the next 5-10 years plus? So I love that you kind of had those indicators and weren't afraid to make that change as well. And then when it came to starting your own business, again, that's another shift, and that's another thing that, it can feel, quite daunting, confronting, depending on where you're coming from and your background and all sorts of things. So I'd love to hear that experience for you. And what was the thing that made you think, okay, 4 or so years ago, like, I want to start my own thing?
There were multiple kind of things that fed into that decision at the time, I suppose. I'd always wanted to run my own business. I had worked in commercialization, so I'd worked with startups and founders and always felt jealous that I was in this support role and that they were leading these businesses. But I just never had, I didn't have the idea for my own business and what that would look like. So it wasn't until, I moved into the diversity, equity, and inclusion space. And as I said, I'd been there for about 5 years, and I noticed this growing opportunity to be a standalone consultant in the space. And the advantages that it would give me is being able to work with a broader range of industries, of organisations. I was working in the higher education industry, which is actually really advanced in this space. And I wanted to translate that learning into industries that weren't as advanced. And so that was a real driving factor. I had that passion. Also, I'm ADHD. I didn't know that then. I know that now. And it's also clearly was a key driver in terms of the way that I work. Working for myself is a much better environment for me and the way my ADHD shows up. And so I didn't really know that that was a driving factor, but it absolutely was one of them at the time. And we know that ADHD is a very highly represented in business ownership.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it can be an absolute superpower for getting things done. So I totally, that's awesome. I love it. And so when you first started to go, so you identified that there was, some value that you could add based on the experience that you were doing at the time, within organizations, and you could start to work with some other organizations. And was it easy? Was there challenges along the way? How did you find that transition in the early days?
Oh, at the time, I thought incredibly unlucky in that 3 months after I launched, I had lined up a number of contracts and COVID hit. Right. So everything disappeared overnight. Those contracts just instantly went away, and I was like, oh my God, what have I done?
What an introduction to business.
Now how do I do it? But it turned out to be, and I hate those like, it turned out to be the best thing ever stories. But it kind of did, because it gave me space and time to actually consider what the business was going to look like and what I was going to provide, rather than just following the work that had come up. Because that work that had come up was all based on the same type of thing that I had been doing in the higher education sector. So what it meant was that, I really had to be a bit more thoughtful about how I shaped the business, what it looked like, what services I was going to provide, and how I was going to grow a network. Because at that stage, I had zero profile outside of the higher ed sector. So, it actually turned out to be quite positive. So it was definitely a challenge having that happen. But at the same time, I think what I learned from that was taking time for that considered approach and really understanding what it is you want from the business, how you want to work, like
Mm.
what jobs you actually want to take and how you're going to, I guess, strategically craft that.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Because, I think that for many of us, when we go into business, we don't want to be doing or working as much as we were in the corporate space. We want to be
Mm.
able to be in charge of our own schedule and have that flexibility and be working on the projects that excite us, not the projects that we're kind of forced to work on or told to work on. And so I think that's a big driving factor for a lot of the people, at least that I know I work with, in terms of
Mm.
just the driver to get started on your own and overcome, I guess, some of those early challenges, like you said, with some of the uncertainty that can happen in business, particularly in those early days. And no one would
Mm.
have predicted COVID. So
No, and I
that's,
think you're right in terms of that. I think for a lot of particularly people, not just in the DI field, but in as consultants,
mm,
if you've been working in the corporate world and then you decide to start providing consultancy services in the same kind of environment, you have a tendency to just follow into those same working patterns.
yeah.
And yeah, really thinking about, no, hang on, I don't have to work 9 to 5. Like
Mm,
I can, yeah, choose the work I want and also choose the time that I want to work on that.
yeah, yeah, awesome. So you kicked off in the business and you were able to get the business like up and running and you had a few clients that you were working with. Tell me a little bit around, those first couple of years that you were in the business and what that looked like, and I guess some of the things that you were looking forward to doing in terms of what were some of your goals at the time when you first got started.
My goal was just to replace my salary. I
Mm,
had no other goal than that, but do work that I like and earn the same amount of money.
yeah.
That was a very simple goal, and I was very fortunate in that it turned out that during COVID and post-COVID, my industry kind of really boomed, and I
Mm,
was in the right place at the right time. So I was very fortunate to be able to secure contract after contract and not have to go through that kind of roller coaster ride that is quite typical, I hear, of early business time. So I got lucky from that perspective, and I did manage to replace my salary within the year, I think. So yeah, it went really well for those first three years, I think.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, beautiful. So first goal ticked off, business up and running, people starting to know who you are, getting a reputation in the market. I know you became a LinkedIn top voice as well during that time. So you're obviously sharing your message and getting the message of the business and also the work that you do in the DEI space as well out there, which was great. And then you hit another inflection point in the business, which is, I know when we started to talk and when we started to connect, what was going on for you in the business at that point, sort of 3 years in, and what were some of the challenges that you were experiencing at that point?
I had no trouble finding work, and it was absolutely because of LinkedIn and that industry boom that occurred. But it wasn't necessarily, I realized that I'd done the same kind of work for quite a period of time now, and it wasn't giving me the same joy, I
Mm,
suppose. But also I was doing a lot of the busy work and a lot of the work that 5 years ago I had other people doing for me, and because I didn't really enjoy it, and now I was spending a lot of my time doing this work that I didn't really necessarily love, that didn't
mm,
fire me up, and that
mm.
I didn't feel was, I guess, the best use of my time and my skills.
Yeah.
So yeah, for me, it was another one of those moments of, all right, strategic thinking, like what does this business need to look like now, and how do I shift that?
Yeah, I love that because I think we can often feel like business is static when it's not. It's evolving, and we're all in charge of our own businesses in terms of how we want to operate and the work we want to do, and that's obviously the reason for starting. And then it can be really common that you find yourself in this spot in business where you're like, I've got work, I've got clients, like I'm paying the bills, I'm doing all the things, but you kind of not what you enjoy, or you know that there's more out there now. And like you said, it's not the best use of your time to do certain tasks as you start to scale and as you start to grow as well. So I guess,
Mm.
for many people, when they hit that point, you've got the choice of staying as you are and just continuing on that track and just taking on the contracts that you're taking on to pay the bills, or like you said, kind of wiping everything clean again, restarting in a sense, and really sort of intentionally building the business that you want to scale from there. And so when you started to think that way, what was the kind of help or support that you were really looking for that was going to be useful for you to take your business to that next level?
I had tried a couple of things myself,
Mm-hmm.
and I had hired people, and that hadn't worked out so well. And then I had had some hires that had worked out well. And yeah, so I tried a number of things, but I just felt like there was a missing piece, that I'd probably gone as far as what my knowledge went in terms of what I've been able to learn about running a business through the channels that I had learnt through beforehand. And that I just felt that, yeah, now is kind of the time to get some expert support in areas that perhaps I didn't have the knowledge that I really wanted in, and something to really help me do that refresh, and not just refresh in the way I had done before, but actually step out and do it a bit differently.
Yeah, yeah, which I think is great. Like you said, hit the reset button and then intentionally sort of build what you want. So then we started working together. You're part of our tribe, which we love having you a part of as well, by the way. And so what were some of the things that were really impactful for you, whether it be a training, whether it be, different ways of thinking, whether it be some things that, you learnt from the coaching or the group that really sort of supported you in like starting your momentum in that different direction? Is there anything that kind of stands out to you?
I think there's a number of things. One for me was being a bit more strategic and consistent around how I showed up, how I built my brand and my profile. I've relied organically on it. And as I mentioned, ADHD. So that means I'm absolutely starring at times and become a LinkedIn top voice. And other times I'm totally absent from the platform altogether, which is not ideal. So consistency was definitely one of the things that helped, and that accountability piece of going through the program, showing up each week and reframing, but also all of the stuff around the sales psychology, which was, I didn't really need to have that when my area of work was booming, but now it is more competitive. There's a lot more people in my space. There's less money coming out into the industry. So yeah, I needed to be a lot more sophisticated, I think, and professional about how I showed up. And so the training modules were really helpful around just upping my game in terms of how I'm showing up on LinkedIn, how consistently I'm doing that, and how I'm actively bringing new clients in front of me on a regular basis.
Yeah, I love that, because you were certainly not a newbie in business. You'd already established yourself. You had a really great presence already online, and it was more around, taking it to that next stage. And like you said, just getting really strategic and really sort of sharpening your toolkit, if you like, to take you to that next level in business, which is awesome. And so since doing that, I know even today we were talking, you've landed a new client, which is awesome. So since doing that and applying what you've learned, what has been the impact on either yourself or the business?
I feel like it's still in that transition phase, as I'm still refining my offerings and the way I want to work with people. But it has definitely meant that there is a whole bunch of new clients or potential clients that are in front of me and that I'm having calls with and connecting with, that are sharing my stuff on LinkedIn and recommending me. And I just feel that pipeline has just grown significantly. And so, yeah, I have been able to turn some clients into those who are kind of floating around for a while into sales. And I just now have a way of working with clients that works for me and also seems to be working for them. So that feels really great too, to have that refresh and have that turn out positively as a win-win for myself and for the clients that I'm working with.
Yeah, awesome. And just in terms of bottom line for the business, what would you say in terms of just the collective added revenue you've been able to add to the business just from those new clients coming through?
That one's a really hard one to judge, because I've transitioned the business so much. So I'm still saying no to stuff that people want me to do, but was the stuff that I was doing previously and don't want to do now. So I feel like in a couple of months' time, I'll have that. But at the moment, it's more about that transition from the type of work I was doing into this new way of working.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, I definitely think that being able to say no to projects is super important. You're not in that position anymore, or whether you were or not in the beginning, because things have sort of evolved pretty quickly for you in the business. But, to not be in that position where you feel desperate to take on clients just because you want the money, or you have to pay the bills or keep the lights on, and all these things that we hear, to be able to say like, no, this is the direction I want. These are the types of clients that I'm working with. And then being able to pick and choose those clients, like that's just a huge win in and of itself, right?
Yeah, exactly. Choose the clients and the way in which I want to work, and lead that conversation, as some of your modules have helped me kind of realize that I can lead that rather than just being at their whim in terms of what they want me to do for them.
Yeah. Yeah, perfect. And what are you most excited about for the future, Bree? What are you most looking forward to in the business? Let's just say like in the next 12 months to 2 years time? Like what have you got on the horizon?
Yeah, well, I'm certainly looking forward to, I guess, finally increasing income without increasing my workload. That's the absolute goal, is to be able to still bring in the money that I want to bring in, but be able to kind of pare my involvement back on that so that I can do my passion projects,
Yeah.
which has been the goal for me, to be able to engage in volunteer positions on boards and whatnot, and have the space and time to do that in the areas that light me up.
Fantastic, fantastic. So some board work is opening up, coming your way as well, which is great.
Yeah.
Yeah, beautiful. No, I think it's great. You want to work smarter and not harder, and I think that's the goal for many of us, is like how much, juice can we really squeeze out of this so that we're working with the clients we want to work with, but it's not draining on our time, and you can actually have that flexibility, and the fulfillment and the finances sort of take care of themselves as well from there too.
And I like that. Like, I've taken from you what that kind of adage of, my ADHD brain, impulsive, I keep wanting to do new things and start new things, but that creates so much more extra work. And just you reminding me that let's do what we do well and do more of it before we do something different. And yeah, that just feels really nice and settling. Like, yeah, let's just get this right and get more clients in doing that and reducing my outlay of time.
Yeah, yeah. And, ADHD or not, Bree, you're certainly not alone there. I think as entrepreneurs in general, there's always something new. There's this shiny object syndrome that we're always trying to fight. And so definitely, keeping it simple if you're wanting to scale. And like you said, it's sort of been I guess, working together, it's been like a paring back of some things as well, like getting it, really solid and steady, because that's really going to set you up for the long-term, profitability and success, down the track as well. So yeah, we absolutely love working with you, and just so pleased with what you've implemented, from the tribe, and obviously continuing to work together. We're only a few months in, so I'm like really excited at this point. I feel like we're just getting started. So this is really cool. And I'd be really curious for you to just, I guess, kind of share your experience. Like if there was someone that's listening to this and they're on the fence about either starting their own consulting, maybe they have been working in an organization and they kind of have an inkling that they've got something they want to do, but maybe are feeling a little bit less than confident to get it started. Or they might be on the fence about working with us as well in the tribe. So I'd love to hear your thoughts, just as someone that's gone through both of those experiences. What advice would you give to that person?
Yeah, the advice to the person wondering whether to start the business or not. I received so much advice from people telling me that it was so risky and it was unlikely I was going to make money and I should be prepared for 3 years to earn nothing. And I would just say to people, that does not have to be your story. Like, you know what you're doing. If you put consideration and thought into how you run that business and learn about running a business, then that doesn't have to be your story. Like, we can make money. Not going to say you're going to replace your salary instantly, but there is absolutely money to be made for people who are prepared to do that and to really commit to it. So I would say yes, if you're motivated enough, do it. In terms of the program, my objections, I guess, at the beginning, and my concerns were that it was maybe a program more based at people who were new to business. And I can see a lot of people in the program who that is the case for, and they're getting a lot out of it. I find, for me, having been 4 years in, it's actually almost the best time to do it, because I am able to just build on the skills that I have and, as you say, like, refine what I'm doing and really be able to test that out with you in terms of what's working and what's not, and with the other coaches and the tribe. That's all just been so helpful for me where I'm at the moment. So yeah, my objection, I think, turned out not to be founded. It has been totally the right thing to do at this time of my business.
Yeah. And like I said, we're just getting started, so it's awesome. And I appreciate that, because I think there's, many people that can listen to this and just on their own journey in business as well, just trying to figure out, what's right for them and what they need at the right time. So I think that's really, really useful to know from your experiences, which is great. So I know that there's going to be maybe some people working within organizations that are listening to this as well, who could definitely identify that the organization can go through some transformation when it comes to the DEI space. So for those people that are listening to this and want to find out a little bit more about the work that you do, where can they find you and what's the best way to reach out to them?
100% LinkedIn. I'm a LinkedIn convert. Catch me on LinkedIn. I also have a website, breegorman.com. So that's nice and simple to remember as well. So either through contacting me through the website or just messaging me through LinkedIn and I'll get back to you.
Perfect. Well, you answered my trick question correctly. I always ask that question, and because we've worked so much on LinkedIn together, I'm horrified when people don't say LinkedIn as their first thing. So you passed that
Definitely.
test, Bree.
Yeah. No, LinkedIn nerd through and through.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, thank you so much for spending the time and just sharing a little insight into your journey and some of the things that we've been doing together with the team as well and the tribe. Like I said, we're just getting started. I'm so excited for where you're heading, and I absolutely love the work that you do, and it's so, so needed in this space and will be continually needed as we move forward as well. So thanks so much for your time, Bree.
Oh, no, thank you. Yeah, it's been a pleasure to be a part of the tribe and to learn more about the way that you work.